Hi, I'm Liselle Sambury and welcome back to my channel where I talk about all things writing, traditional publishing, and a little bit of reading. And this is a bit of a different video. So what this is it's actually a compilation of a video series that I've been doing on TikTok, where every day that I work on it, I'm basically documenting how the drafting process goes for writing the second book in my new YA Dark Academia fantasy series, whose first book, A Mastery of Monsters, comes out in summer of 2025. And so every day I work on the book, I do one of these updates and I post it on TikTok. And so I created this compilation sort of video series here on YouTube to basically batch together each week's video into one YouTube video, just because the videos are kind of like, they're too long for YouTube Shorts, but they're also a little too short for me to want to post them every day on YouTube. And so for those of you that like my YouTube channel and you aren't really fans of TikTok, that's basically what these videos are. It's just all the videos for that week packed into one, so that you can watch this every week and you can kind of see the whole kind of videos for the week. I am still going to be doing my monthly writing vlogs, so you'll still see those, and those really include like other facets of my life and like b-roll and that sort of thing, whereas these are like very pointed, basically only about drafting this specific book. So without further ado, I will let you enjoy the compilation, and you may notice that this intro is the same for every compilation video. That's because I just wanted to do one intro that I can use for all of the compilation videos going forward. And of course, I will also put them in a playlist, which I have linked down below, so that as the series goes on, if you missed anything and there's a few videos, you can just watch the whole playlist of the compilation. And I am back from the long weekend, and I have basically just like jumped right back into this chapter. So I am in the like final match of the whole competition. And at this point, because of how much things have changed, I basically abandoned my plan, because so much stuff has changed and shifted that like everything that I kind of have planned out, or I had planned out, isn't really relevant anymore. Not so much. So like the general idea of what's going to happen in the chapter is still kind of relevant, but a lot of like the stuff where I was like, oh, make sure to put this in, it's not relevant anymore. That whole section is gonna have to be I guess kind of like revamped. So yeah, so now I'm basically just like off on my own with I'm not quite flying by the seat of my pants, because like I do have a plan in my mind. It's just different from the plan that I had before, and it's not written down. So I'm kind of just having to work on it. So it takes me a little bit longer to get started because now I have to take that time to kind of think and figure out and be like, okay, what am I doing? So going into this chapter, mind you, this has been the case for the matches this whole time. I know who's going to win and who's going to lose, and so I just kind of have to like go in and do that, and just kind of like decide where I want it to be. I thought about like, because the way that this whole thing works is like, there are like monsters and they work in pairs with like a person, but the person can also, the monster is like a person that can transform into a monster, and then they have a partner who's just like a person who cannot become a monster, and so they work in pairs traditionally, and so that's how that whole thing goes. And so there are different kind of like evolutions really of like different skill sets that they can reach up to, and so I know the complete set of evolutions, and so I was kind of deciding whether I wanted to like showcase like a higher level, but I decided in the end to like not do that and to save it for like the third book, because there's only so many levels and like the levels that they go through in the first book is really just like the first level, and then the second book they're at like levels like 2 and 3, and then there's a level like 4 and 5, but I feel like that's better to save for a third book because those are kind of like the final iterations. So I thought about doing it because it could have been dramatic, but then I was like, no, I'm not gonna do that. So I found a different way to get it across. So I feel like that worked out generally, and I feel like the match came together well. I feel like I was pleased with how everything, like, you know, I feel like there were good ups and downs where you could be like, who's gonna win, who's gonna lose, and I do think that you can actually like feel that, like you don't really know going in. So I'm very pleased about how that all came together. I also made sure to give the characters kind of like a talking moment in the beginning, because I was just gonna jump into the match, but then I felt like they should probably discuss some stuff a little bit. I don't know if they should be having more strategic conversations about what their strategy is going into things. They probably should, because they just kind of enter every time and they're like, let's do it. And I'm like, you should probably have a more established strategy. So that's something I'm gonna have to edit in, but I'm overall like pretty pleased with how this came together. And we are officially at 100,000 words in the book. Still, I think like 15 to 20,000 words to go. But yeah, I don't know. It feels like something to have hit 100,000. So I'm excited about that. So if you got here, if you watched the end of this video, I would love it if you throw out a little 100 emoji to celebrate reaching 100,000, because yeah, I'm really excited about that milestone. But that's really it for today. I don't have a line, and I will see you again tomorrow. And today I was writing a chapter from the second POV. I think this is the fastest POV switch I've had, and this is because I kind of had to add this last minute. So I don't know if it'll be weird in the story, but hopefully not. But I think in this last act, like there's a little bit more frequent POV shifts. And I feel like that's fine. So I'm just gonna do it. I'm just gonna roll with it. And so basically this is kind of like the conclusion of the mystery of like trying to find something. And I talked in the past about with the second POV, I realized there's sort of like a group of characters that needed to exist that I didn't realize needed to exist until later on. So I've just chucked them in there. They're just in there now. And so they had to do a sort of separate fight together, which is fun because this fight is technically taking place at the same time as the fight happening in the other POV. And so it's kind of a nice tandem thing. I don't really know how to, like, I don't want to do something where I'm like 5 minutes before or like going back in time sort of thing. I hope that it just comes across that it is happening at the same time. I've been like watching My Hero Academia and like catching up on the latest season, and they keep doing this thing where like they're having this big battle and there's lots of different battles happening at the same time, and the way that they're handling is they're like 20 minutes before this happened or 30 minutes, and I just watching it as a viewer, I'm like, I don't care for that. And so it's so funny to like be writing this and I'm like, yeah, I don't really want to do that here. But yeah, also watching that last season has made me think maybe I'm being too nice to my characters, because wow, they are really going through it in that season. But anyway, moving on from that. So they each kind of had to do their own sort of fight. It's kind of interesting because I'm kind of like doing a final arc for some characters that I hadn't forgotten to put in. And so, but I don't think they're gonna have like big arcs in the story. There's just kind of like medium ones, I would say. So like I've created a character that's like a little bit competing with the POV character, so now she's in there, and then I have another character that like the POV character thinks that like he kind of doesn't take his duties seriously, and so I have some good archetypes, and then the other ones that are in there are both characters that are in the first book, so they already have an established relationship. So I feel like this was like good in that I could kind of already see where this character trajectory and where the relationships are going. So it's good. They do that fight, and then something happens later on that I thought personally was really cool. As I said, this character has been trying to level up a weapon the whole time, and so this is kind of like a good moment for that. She technically isn't like hitting the peak of the weapon yet. I think that's, you know, something that I will save for later on. I might not even do it in this book. It might be like a book 3 thing. I don't know. We'll decide. And so there was a cool moment with that, which I thought was nice. And there's like, I feel like a good moment of like her really like solidifying in her art, because by the time they get into this last act, like to me, the journey that the character's going on throughout the book has kind of like, they've kind of had their realization, and this is a point to kind of like challenge it a little bit so that they can push against it and kind of double down. And I feel like this was a good moment for this POV character to have that. So I was altogether like very pleased with everything. I saw there is a quote that I like in this, but it's spoilery, so I will not say it this time around. But yeah, I was really like unsure when I went to start this chapter, because again, I thought of this on the fly. I really had no idea what I should put in this chapter. I had no idea what the challenge was going to be. And so there was a lot of thinking on the fly, as is going to be the case for the rest of this, but I'm very pleased with what I put together. And today I finally got to write the chapter where I had thought of that really good, really brilliant idea, and then I was like, oh, I won't get to write it for like 2 to 3 chapters from now. But today was the day. And once again, I had to spend time in the beginning figuring out what the heck am I going to do in this chapter, because again, my plan is out the window at this point, so I have very loose ideas. So I knew that they had to get to a certain location, and that it was going to be like a formal event. And so those were kind of the building blocks I was working with. They also have some other things that they have to do. So they have to kind of convince a character to do something, and this character doesn't like them very much, and so they already know that that's not going to be super easy, and they've kind of like got a time restriction, like they need to kind of convince that character like basically like within an hour or so, and they don't really know that they're going to be able to like do whatever like to convince them or like give them something that they want in order to make this happen. So they're kind of on a time crunch of trying to get that done. And then there's also that big thing, that new idea that I thought of, that I was like, okay, I have to put that in, and like, how am I gonna do that? And I decided that I would put it right at the end, because it makes a really, really good cliffhanger. It's a very good cliffhanger. I'm extremely proud of it. I think it's so good. And I'm like, man, this is the best idea. So yeah, that was basically kind of like, I guess it was more kind of like set piece transition sort of thing. So in the beginning, they kind of have a discussion about like their plan going into things, which is when they decide that they need to convince this character to do something. But basically, they've now kind of like split into 2 groups that are going to be doing different things. And so the one group is with that second POV character and her love interest. So that's going to be in the next chapter. And then this chapter is with the main POV and kind of everyone else that's part of those moving pieces. Like they're coming along for this section of it, and they're going to the party and all of this stuff, and they have to do their convincing part. So I thought this was good. I think the description is certainly lacking because for one, description is not something that comes naturally to me in the first place, and so I know that that's definitely something I'm gonna be having to like add and finesse later on, because I was basically just like, it's a big fancy cottage and like there are chandeliers, I don't know, and I know it's a bad description, but that will have to come later on, because I was just like, okay, I like got partway into the chapter and I realized I was running out of chapter space, and I was like, we just need to get to the ballroom now. We just need to move forward. And so I was just like, and now we're here and it's a ballroom, and I don't know, it looks fancy. So yeah, I will have to be fixing that later. But I was able to get them there, and I was able to go ahead and get that scene and that idea that I came up with. Oh, and it's so good. It's so good. I'm like, I can't wait for people to read this, but it's gonna be not until 2026 because it's the second book in the series. But I think it is so good. I think it's stellar. Like, I'm like, this is great. So I'm really pleased about that. And I do have a line today. I do have to do a little adjustment of pronouns just for spoiler's sake. But so the quote is, "And this time they'll be the one without power, and I'll be the one holding the knife." So I thought that was good. I liked that one. And yeah, that's pretty much it for today. And I will see you again tomorrow. And I'm very excited about it being Friday because I'm very excited for a break, even though I'm so close to the end. I'm getting so close to the end. So today was a chapter from the second POV, from that other POV. And so again, you know what I'm starting to realize is when I do these like on the fly chapters, like I'm such a planner. I'm a very hardcore plotter. I just like, that's the way that I have to do things. But I do feel like kind of especially proud when I like just think of something on the fly and I do it and I execute it and it's good. And I'm like, wow. Like, it's just extra exciting because I'm like, I truly sat down today with concepts of a plan, let's say. In that I was like, okay, I know they have to steal something and then they have to get to a certain location, and that's it. That was all I had. And then I was like, okay, how difficult am I gonna make it stealing this thing? I had an idea for like a bit of a twist at the end, and I was like, okay, so now I'm like putting all these things together, and I ended up writing like 600 words in the chapter, and then I jumped back to the beginning and then I like added something in because I realized it was like getting too easy for them to like do this, and I wanted it to be enough of a challenge to fill out a chapter and like to feel satisfying as a reader, to feel like they didn't just get handed something, but not so challenging such that it is taking up too much of the chapter because I need them to get to this location. And I feel like I managed to do it really well. I was also able to make a situation in which the character can kind of like have a confrontation with another character. So like this POV character, throughout this kind of whole book, she has this confrontation with this other character, basically because there's sort of a certain title, and she's kind of taken over that title from that other character, but the other character is trying to get it back. So they're kind of in contention the whole time because of that. And then they finally get to have this moment where they kind of have a bit of a conversation to talk a little bit more, because the thing about this POV character is that she does have quite a bit of privilege that other people don't have, and not just in the way of like money, but also in kind of like I suppose pedigree is the best way to put it. And that does create a sort of divide between her and other characters that she's not necessarily as aware of as she perhaps should be. And so this is like kind of a moment for that to come up as well. So I thought that was all really good. So I was excited about that. So her and the love interest went and they did this whole thing with the item, and then they got to the second location. They also get to have a bit of a conversation about love interest stuff, which I think is very cute. And then they go to the second location, and I think it's kind of fun because like they're concentrated, like they're going to have to fight monsters now. And so like they're semi-concentrated on that, but they're also like flirting. So I thought that was fun to do. And yeah, it's just a good time. And I feel like what I really like is they have such a different like love interest dynamic than the main POV and like the love interest stuff that she's got going on. And so I really appreciate that there's a little bit of like difference in between them. So yeah, that's it for today. I don't have a quote. I'd like to quote, but it was spoilery, so I won't share it. And I will see you again on Monday for the final week of work.